This is Ryan Elliott for Boxing Social in association with Betfred. We've got something a little bit different today. I'm in a Zoom meeting, we're going to call it, with Chris Billam-Smith, Commonwealth Cruiserweight Champion. Chris, thank you so much for jumping on, mate. How are you?
All good, mate. Zoom meeting's very formal, isn't it?
It makes it sound a lot more formal than it's actually going to be. But yeah, this is actually pretty good. It's the first time I use it for an interview. But there we are. How are you keeping anyway in this crazy time? How are you keeping yourself occupied?
Yeah, all good, mate. In a good little routine now. Started properly Monday this week. Where are we now? Wednesday. Get up, make my coffee, do some yoga, do like 15, 20 minutes of yoga in the morning, then go out for a run. And then come back, have breakfast and chill for a bit. And then train again later on in the afternoon and just staying as productive as I can, mate.
I see a lot of boxers improvising at the minute, the ones that are keeping active. I've just seen your sort of home gym setup you've got going on outside at the minute. Talk me through that.
So, yeah, my brother's basically, he works on the films now doing rigging for stunts and stuff. And, so he's got a lot of scaffolding equipment and stuff. So I asked him if he had the ability to make me a little rig, little setup where I can do some pull-ups and hang a bag off the end. And do some squats off of it as well. So I've got all that set up now. So we're good to go. Used it for pull-ups last couple of days. Haven't used a punch bag myself yet. My fiance Mia has been on it this morning. I need to go and pick up some gloves from the gym because I left them at the local gym. So once I go pick them up and then and some ham wraps, I'll be good to go.
It's nice to hear you've got yourself in a good routine now and you're sort of being able to go through your day and go about your work. But with everything that happened and obviously, you know, your May date was completely pushed back, was it hard to stay motivated during lockdown at first?
Yeah, it was. It was difficult. I was still training, doing bits and doing a few runs here and there. I was probably doing anywhere between 4 and 6 sessions a week for the first couple of weeks, but it started to get more and more difficult. So I just had to have a proper routine and structure. It's been a while since I've had to self-motivate. You know, when you're naturally motivated when you're in camp, and Shane gives you a time to be somewhere, you're accountable for that. So it's a little bit different when you're doing you've got to do all your own training. It's easy to get yourself up for a couple of runs if you're doing some runs like during camp and stuff, but the difficult bit is self-motivating and stuff like that. But now's all good.
It's good to hear you are staying motivated. Obviously, you're working towards that May Day in Cardiff. You've been out sparring with Myris Bradis as well. How good a place were you in before everything was sort of put on hold? Did you feel like you were starting to gain a bit of momentum? You had the Commonwealth title, you're working towards a defence, you've been out sparring world-class fighters. How good a place were you in before this all sort of broke down?
Yeah, in a really good place. Obviously, I was disappointed that we didn't get the Bournemouth show sorted. Obviously, a few people turned that show down and that date down, which was meant to be March 14th. That may have even been able to go ahead with everything that's gone on. I'm not sure if the show would have been allowed that weekend. If so, it would have been the last weekend, which would have been perfect timing. But in hindsight, if I had had that date, I wouldn't have had the experience of going out and fighting Bradis, which was a great experience in itself. And, you know, I trained hard up to that point. I've been in camp for 5 or 6 weeks, and then had 2 weeks out in Latvia, sparring the world number one. So it was a great experience for me at a perfect stage in my career, especially with everything that's going on. You know, you mentally, you sort of get yourself in a fight frame of mind when you're sparring the world number one, and especially after a couple of times, you know what he does, and you're really starting to figure him out a little bit, but you also know the dangers he possesses. So I was in a really good place and looking forward to the May fight. I had a decent amount of time that we could still have a camp. I had a week off, or a lighter week after I came back, and then we were about to start full training. I did a spar with Josh Boazzi on the Tuesday of the first week of camp, and then that was the day we got sent home. So so we'd already had that spar planned, and that morning we found out we were all going home that night, but Josh was already on his way down to spar, so we did our spar, and then that was camp over for now.
You mentioned the disappointment of maybe not getting that Bournemouth show sorted. There was talk you headlining the next gen down there. A few different fighters knocked it back. It's something you and I spoke about when we were just chatting the other day. When everything resumes and people are sort of trying to make up for lost time, do you think it's almost going to be easier to make these fights, these domestic fights, because fighters may be more inclined to try and make up for that lost time and accept fights that maybe they otherwise wouldn't have?
Possibly. I don't know. Obviously, our show has now been moved to July the 11th, which is what I'm now focusing and working towards. But possibly, you might find people, if they're in dire need, but at the same time, are people going to take risks if they're been inactive anyway throughout, even just before this happened? Are they going to take the risks when they probably haven't had a proper camp with their trainer and getting the sparring in and things like that? So that's half the battle with getting back, I think, to shows in general, is people haven't had proper camps or enough sparring, because we're not allowed to spar. Obviously, we have to social distance. Sparring is not exactly what you call social distancing. It's quite the opposite. It's probably the worst thing you could do in the situation. But yeah, you might find some people that are desperate to get back in there. Obviously, there's the side of the financial side, but there's just the love and the passion that I can only speak for myself, but that I'm just looking forward to getting back training, sparring, and getting back in the ring in general. It's a really strange time, but yeah, hopefully people they want to get back in there, and boxing will be booming, and there might be the calm before the storm, as boxing has been recently anyway. It's been absolutely massive, especially in Britain, but it might even get even bigger after all this is blown over.
You mentioned there your May 9th date has been put back to July 11th. We know fighters like to have that date to work towards. Is it good for you mentally to know that there is still a date, albeit it's been pushed back, there for you, rather than sort of waiting for ifs, buts and maybes?
Yeah, I mean, I stay in the gym most of the time anyway. Like, I've been in the gym since 6th of January. We were hoping for the March date. Then we figured out mid-February that date wasn't going to go ahead. So that was probably going to be boxing in April. And I just stayed in the gym then. So obviously it's nice to have a date. And but yeah, it's good that it has been rescheduled. Obviously a lot of shows have just been cancelled indefinitely, and they don't know if their fight is even going to go ahead and things like that. So yeah, it's good to be on one of the rescheduled dates, and who knows, it might end up being behind closed doors if they start bringing that in. I know that the UFC are doing something similar. So if that gets allowed, then obviously we can do it behind closed doors.
What do you make of fighting behind closed doors? Is it something that would bother you at all? Is it something you're completely happy to do? You mentioned there, Dana White has said he's found a private island for these shows to go ahead. I'm not saying Eddie's going to go and pluck some little aisle out for these shows, but if they were to go ahead in a behind closed doors environment, how would you feel about that?
Yeah, like I said, the passion for me, obviously you want to fight in front of fans and all that sort of thing, or if they're allowed to do it, I imagine they'll allow a certain amount of people in the arena as well, maybe not. But I imagine if a show's allowed to go ahead, there's going to be allowing, maybe even 100 people in there as well. But that might not be the case. It might just be TV only. But yeah, I'm up for it. Obviously, like I said, the passion for fighting. Obviously, you do it in a way to please the fans and do it for that atmosphere. And that's one of the reasons I got into the sport. But on my second fight, I boxed pretty much behind closed doors anyway. When I got in the ring at Wembley Arena, the doors were closed. And then about just before the first bell, 60, 70 people ran in, all coming to watch me fight. Obviously, George got me a slot right on the beginning of the show. So that experience might come in handy if we end up fighting behind closed doors.
Now, Chris, let's just move into dreamland for a second. Let's talk about when boxing has resumed. We're all back in full flow. you'll have the Thorley fight, but if you could have a sort of, from the 12 months when you do get back in the ring, say that July date, all is well, what would your sort of dream next 3 steps be? So Thorley and then the next 2 fights after that, what would you want for your development, for your career?
The Thorley fight, obviously which I think is a really good fight. Obviously, he's a Commonwealth Games medalist. He's unbeaten. He's 14-0. He's a bit of an unknown, and it's a situation I was sort of in when I got the Reactor shot. So I know what someone like in that situation can be, how dangerous they can be. And then look towards the British title. I believe Dion Juma and Richard Reactor are fighting for that. Obviously, Reactor holds it, so I'd love that fight. Whoever the winner is, I'd love that fight. And then, see where we go. Obviously, I'd love to have a fight down in Bournemouth and get a headliner show down here. It'd be unbelievable and a dream come true for me. And then just look to keep progressing. Maybe European title shot. I know Tommy McCarthy's mandatory for it, so it'd be great if he won the title. We keep all the belts in and around the British Isles.
Final one before I let you go, Chris. I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit here. Everyone is in the same boat right now in lockdown. For the boxing fans watching this, what recommendations would you give them of fights on the past to watch? If I said, could you give us 3 fights that boxing fans can go and watch to keep themselves entertained during lockdown, what would they be?
I'd go Bo Holyfield. Obviously, it was a classic. Can't remember which one it was, which is the classic, but I remember watching both. I think there's 2, weren't there?
3.
3 in the end. Yeah. Jesus, can't remember which one was the best one. I'll go that. But they're great fights. Holyfield's one of my favourite fights to watch. Obviously, cruiserweight absolutely blitzed. Everyone in his path, and then done, and like everyone moved up to heavyweight and done unreal from considering how small he was compared to people like Bo, and the shots he takes from Bo are just ridiculous. Fight I watched the other night actually was one of George's old fights against Kenny Anderson. That was a good little scrap. Took me back a bit, and that's a good fight. It has its ups and downs in that fight, and that's another one I'd say. And then I'd probably go for like what are their names? Marquez and Vasquez, was it?
Yeah.
Israel?
Yeah.
Where they were just, I think obviously they had 4 fights. Was it 4 or 5 in the end? I think it was 4. But they were just bloodbaths, the cuts that they had, and it carried on, and that was crazy fights. I remember watching the trilogy and watching the fights when they, the day after they'd happened and stuff, and they were crazy fights. I think I was Israel Vasquez versus Rafael Marquez, was it?
Yeah.
Crazy fight, like so much blood and drama and some wicked fights. So I'd go for that trilogy, and also the trilogy of Bo Holyfield, and then go watch George versus Kenny Anderson. Don't know if George appreciate you saying that. Wasn't his best night, but it was an exciting fight.
Well, Chris, thank you very much for your time. This has been a very productive meeting, I would say. But we'll catch you very soon. Enjoy lockdown, mate, and thanks again.
Nice one. Cheers, Ryan. Take care, mate.